Hi, this is Mark. I hope the new year's going well for you. Thank you for being here. I thought I'd jump on before we got too far ahead of ourselves and just tell you the way these podcasts are set up and the way podcasts are ordered in this universe of podcasts. You know, when we started this show 5 years ago, there were a ton of people doing podcasts. Now it's a ton of people times 5. Every celebrity has a podcast. Every topic is taken. So the world of podcasts is crowded. If you subscribe through iTunes or even Stitcher, when we ask you to leave a 5-star review or a word or two on iTunes, when you leave us that top rating, the 5 stars, and just a word or two saying, love it, listen to it when I can, whatever you say, it helps in the search engine that's associated with podcasts. That's why that's important, because when you put in The Edge, and it's a name that's so common. I mean, if I had to do it again, I would just never use the title The Edge, but I'm glad we have it, and I'm glad it's there now, but you know what I mean. The more 5-star ratings we have, and the more positive reviews we have, the more subscribers we have, the more The Edge with Mark Thompson, which is now what you have to put, because, as I say, there's so many shows called The Edge. The Edge with Mark Thompson will filter to the top, or at least be in the top 3 or the top 5, whatever. So that's why those reviews and those 5-star ratings are so important. The other thing, which I've never mentioned, I can't believe I haven't mentioned it, but I've been flogged sufficiently, so now I am going to mention it to you, is we are on YouTube. So when you go to YouTube, you can put in The Edge with Mark Thompson, and we will come up, and that might be the easiest way for you to listen to the show. Again, it's audio only, but if that's the easiest way for you to have access to the show, then you should get a hold of us that way. And now what I say to you often, however we come to you, we're so grateful that you spend some time with us. You may not be able to take in every episode. You may not be able to take in every minute of every episode. But even if you skip around, we think that they're cool conversations. And the philosophy of this podcast has always been, hey, if this conversation is interesting to us, we think it will be interesting to you. Sometimes it'll be something that you had no idea you had an interest in. Sometimes it'll be something that you're very interested in and that you want to learn more about, or that you even may know more about than is represented in the conversation. And for that reason, we have a new email address as well. And it's a simple one. The email address, if you want to reach us about anything, edgewithmarkthompson@gmail.com. edgewithmarkthompson@gmail.com. Anything you want to tell us. Try to do more of this. Try to do more of that. We'd love to see this guest. We'd love to see that guest. Can you have so-and-so back? Whatever you want to communicate, we want to hear from you. edgewithmarkthompson@gmail.com. And now this episode. We start with Michael Shure, the Fast 15. We begin with some movie quotes, some of which have the F word and the S word in them. So if you're listening with kids in the car, just be aware of that. That'll be at the beginning of the show. And then Grace Baldridge, the TYT star, she does a podcast and show called Murder with Friends. She drove from L.A. to Alaska with her girlfriend, who she then proposed marriage to on the way. Plus, we talk about her coming out and when she came out. All the cool lesbian stuff was revealed in this conversation. Again, thank you for clicking on the Amazon link through our website, edge-show.com. To do all your Amazon shopping, we get a little piece of whatever you spend. It's the same Amazon that you would normally shop at, but they, because you came through our website, will spin us off a little piece, and that helps us keep the lights on here. There are those of you who've hit our little virtual tip jar. There's a PayPal link on our website at edge-show.com. Thank you. We're so grateful. Every dime that you give us or will give us stays with this podcast to pay producers and the webmaster to keep the show going. So it's the Fast 15 with Michael Shure. I think it runs about 23 minutes in this episode. And then a ride to Alaska with my new favorite lesbian, Grace Baldridge. Let's get going!
This is The Edge.
The advantage, it means.
Hey, look, I just spit on me for no reason.
That's horrible!
Is there some comfort in uncertainty, do you think?
You're a degenerate.
Because Australian Shepherds need action.
Wow. Yeah.
This is The Edge.
That's a self-loathing term that I use.
Oh, got it.
You're listening to The Edge with Mark Thompson.
Before his segment formally started, I just blindsided Michael Shure with some movie quotes.
All right, I want to talk to you guys about appearance, okay? Because most of you dress like shit. I don't know what your financial situation is, and I don't want to know, but you got to get yourself at least one decent suit.
What movie is that from?
I wasn't listening. I'm sorry. You got yourself one decent suit. Is that Boiler Room?
That's so strong.
Was that right?
Yes. That is Ben Affleck in Boiler Room.
Because we have a kind of a minimum level of aesthetic professionalism here that we have to maintain.
Come on, Shure.
That was very, very
It's very,
nice.
to me, that's a much bigger accomplishment. I'm super proud of that, as opposed to what I would have been if that was like, the senator from New Jersey just said that we're going to be doing this in reconciliation. And I was like, oh, that's...
Yeah, that would have been easy for you because you're a political animal.
But people are more wowed by it. I'm much more wowed by knowing something in a movie, because the next 9 questions about a movie I'll get wrong.
All right.
But in the end, we fucked it all up.
Who's that?
But in the end, we fucked it all up. That's Joe Pesci.
From?
Was that Goodfellas? I mean, that's the easy guess.
Joe Pesci part was easy.
Yeah, so I'm going to say it's not. I'm going to say it's Casino.
Yes!
All right, thank you. See, I used some intuition there. That's not a line I know.
Yeah, you did more than just figure it off of the dialogue.
Right.
You figured the whole question.
One more.
Hang on a second.
This is the best. I'm having the best day.
Hold on.
Again, I said I would get 9 straight wrong. I'm still saying no.
This is really great, I think, if you can get it.
Well, I can't.
What movie
Okay.
is this from?
You are going to fuck me over, aren't you?
I don't have a clue.
Wild Things.
Okay.
All right, hold on a second.
0% chance. If you had said to me, was there a movie called Wild Things?
No, with Denise Richards and Matt Dillon.
Okay. Well,
Okay.
I see you roll your way into the semis. Dios mío, man. Liam and me, we're gonna fuck you up.
wow. I don't know that, but that's great.
That is John Turturro playing the Latino in The Big Lebowski.
Ah,
I'll
right.
give you one more here.
Well, you certainly know how to compliment a woman.
I decided not to give you an easy one.
Yeah. What's that one?
Now I'll let it continue and you'll get it.
I don't know.
Well, you certainly know how to compliment a woman. Well, if you'll excuse me.
Do you know who I am?
No, I can't say that I do.
I don't know how to put this, but I'm kind of a big deal.
Oh, yeah. Well, I know this, but I don't know. What?
It's Anchorman.
Anchorman. That's right. Of course it is. Yeah. That's,
There
okay.
you go.
Really?
That's right. That's right. I'm kind of a big
People
deal,
know me.
Of course. Okay.
Well, I'm very happy for you.
That was an easy one, and I lost in the finals.
But we love the game.
Boiler Room. I'm just resting on Boiler Room.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is a new year, and he is the man we sit down with for the Fast 15, politics, and more. He's Michael Shure.
Oh, wow, it's good to be back. Thank you so much.
Great to have you home, Michael.
Really good to be here. Of all the things that I do, even the things for which I am paid, hopefully they're not listening, this is my favorite job.
Well, we actually held up this episode for you because normally we would have posted prior to this, but we couldn't work it out for you to get here. And just we like to sort of balance the show with some stuff that has nothing to do with politics and some stuff that does have something to do with politics. And then we usually do a little bit of a mix. There's a lot going on. There's this incendiary book, this controversial book, which is laying bare the machinations of the Trump presidency over the first year, essentially saying that everyone at the White House views Trump as an idiot. It calls into question even the president's ability to operate as president of the United States.
Listen, I think that we're seeing what naturally transpires when things start going off the rails, is you see people talk about why they are, and then people defend whatever it is that's going off the rails. And that's a sort of political history. We've seen that in, not just in Watergate. You've seen it in smaller scandals, going back pre-Watergate and going back even, books that were written about the beginning years of the Johnson administration after Kennedy took over. You saw it in presidential, lore now with the Clintons. So it's a natural occurrence, and what the theater provides is obviously compelling.
Well, and there are two things one could say to that. If you're sort of a Trumpy or you are supporting this White House and its agenda, you could say, hey, you can say it's running off the rails, but the guy got major tax legislation through, and I understand he's a controversial figure. Hey, look, he has a weird way of saber rattling, and we wish he wouldn't tweet so much, but his presidency isn't off the rails.
Well, it's not a question of the presidency. It's a question of the relationship that he has with the American people and with the media. And I think that the media part is entirely off the rails. So when somebody gets the kind of access that Michael Wolff had, whether or not the president says he had the access, it's clear that he did. One of the most interesting things I thought that I heard about his access was when you go to the White House, when I go to the White House to cover something at the White House, I get a visitor's pass, and it's called an appointment pass, actually, and it's gray for the media. You see people walking around with the blue pass. Some people have a hard pass, right, which is their pass, and they use it all the time. So if you're the White House correspondent for NBC News, you have a hard pass, right? But you have to do it for a while before you get that hard pass. But I get a gray pass because I'm only there very, very infrequently. When you're there and you get a blue pass, everybody's looking at you like, oh, that guy's got a blue pass. She has a blue pass. Look at that. Michael Wolff had a blue pass, which gives you West Wing access. So everybody knew that he had the access that people are saying that he didn't have. The attraction to that access is what makes books like this happen, is that people are curious about what's going on in this seriously dysfunctional White House. And to say it's off the rails, it is off the rails. When you see people fired, let go, leave a White House in droves in important positions like you saw during 2016, that to me is off the rails. It doesn't mean it's crashing. You can get back on the rails, but you're just kind of off.
He got that access because he had a weird relationship with Donald Trump.
Right.
Based on the fact that he's this writer. It's so weird. You see him on all these cable shows now. He looks so mainstream legit. But the truth is he's kind of worked the outskirts gossipy side of journalism.
Right. And I mean, not just journalism. And his shiny objects, everybody who covers stuff covers something that they like or that they're attracted to, has always been social New York. It's always been that part of it. And
that's how he knows Donald Trump.
And that's how he knows Donald Trump, because Donald Trump was never really accepted by social New York. So he was this creature that was very flamboyant, very out there, very fascinating because of, the fact that he had all this money, he was this gaudy, his name was everywhere, yet he was kind of shunned by social New York. Not to mention that he probably in his personality didn't want to engage it totally, but would have wanted to have been accepted to it. Anyway, that's the stuff that Michael Wolff covered. So he had this entree into Trump that pre-existed President Trump that was really Donald Trump. And then he was able to seduce him over the air, to say nice things about him on the air, almost as a wink and a nod. And it's funny, Jake Tapper had Stephen Miller on, criticized him for talking to an audience of one. When Michael Wolff went on TV, he was talking to an audience of one too. It was the same audience. It was Trump. So Trump sees, oh, here's some guy who's saying nice things about me, flattering his way. Well, he's flattering his way into the White House to have this access. He got this access, and then you saw what happened.
It's also, and I want to move from this. It's also worth noting, don't you think, that he is not an anti-GOP guy particularly?
No, he's not. I don't think he's a political guy.
Right.
I think that he just is fascinated by the way that people interact with one another and likes the sort of mini scandalous things that happen within business and within politics, and not any less than he likes the politics necessarily.
And look, he's serving up, Trump I'm talking about, is serving up a White House of controversy and,
right.
and political brush fires like a short order chef.
Yeah, it's a buffet
crazy.
Of stuff,
yeah.
right?
So
constantly.
The media has a weird relationship with this White House. Everybody feels, in the main, that this guy's dangerous, this guy is unpredictable. I think that's probably shared by people on both sides of the aisle. But from a media standpoint, he continues, because he is so unpredictable, to give them great copy.
He does, but I don't think that there's this media groupthink. I don't think they think en masse. It's like, oh, we need this guy there because he gives us great copy. All the people in the media were there when Barack Obama was giving dull copy and Jimmy Carter was giving dull copy, and that's what they do. So I do know what you're saying. I just don't think that there's a groupthink about it. I don't think they think, oh, God, thank goodness for this guy. There might be a monologue writer who thinks that on late night television. There may be, a CNN executive like, this guy is gold for us. But I think his demise will be gold, and what's gold? The next race is gold, too.
Speaking of the next race, Oprah Winfrey spoke at the Golden Globes, and she was impassioned, and she was, of course, a great orator, and she crafted a great speech. At the end of it all, everybody's talking about Oprah in 2020. They're saying that in view of the fact that America elected this last guy.
Well, that's exactly right.
And so I have some thoughts on it, and again, because I am, smart,
really smart.
My thoughts will be the ones that you'll walk away with and want to carry with you. But Michael Shure, what do you make of this whole Oprah and in 2020.
Right. So we'll just fill the time with whatever gibberish I can throw out there until people hear what they should think. Well, you hit the nail on the head. It's because we have a President Donald Trump that any time a celebrity makes a speech that is compelling in the way that Oprah Winfrey's was, oh my God, she's running for president, right? Well, my thoughts on this are, you don't correct this celebrity president with another celebrity president. There's something to be said for having people in office who know how to govern, who have worked in government. That's the profession that presidents have for the most part. Dwight Eisenhower didn't have it. He was a general, but he governed people in a different way. Ronald Reagan was a governor, even as brief as he was a governor, he was a governor. That's what you need to be president, right? So I am not behind the Oprah Winfrey movement. I love Oprah Winfrey. I fear that if she runs for president, the ugliness that the other side will throw at her will diminish who she really is, and I hate that about politics. So I don't like when people I love in that way get into politics from outside, because they are going to be diminished.
That last point is really interesting, because you're right. They can dirty up anybody.
Right. And that's what they do. That's what they're paid to do.
Oprah has something that is lacking in this guy. Look, Donald Trump, as far as I can see, doesn't have a moral center.
Right.
And Oprah, it seems, has a very strong moral center. So immediately you gravitate, when I say you, I'm saying one is drawn to that. Like, well, she'll do the, quote, right thing.
Yeah.
Now let me ding her from the standpoint of her political ambitions. She really, at least based on the speech, and I suspect other speeches that she may give if she were ever to run,
right,
she really does represent this sort of identity politics as embodied by one side. She is a liberal. Now, she's got a lot of great qualities. She is self-made, but I've already heard that spun. That Donald Trump is self-made. Look, he made himself a billionaire when he only started with $14 million, whatever it is.
Right.
I mean, she's really self-made,
right,
but people say, what has she done? I've already heard it.
Right.
What has she done? She's a personality, and she sold her company, of course, because she's a big personality on television and blah, blah, blah. It's as though that's diminished. You could say the same thing about Donald Trump, of course. What has he done? He started with $14 million. Once you start with $14 million, the race is already half won. I guess what I'm getting at, though, is that on identity politics, on the things that a lot of America was sick of, political correctness, I think that's where she may fall down. Now, it may be that the country has gotten to the point where people are desperate for anything at that point. And I suspect it really matters where we are once the race starts.
I would love to see this country move away from the adoration of celebrity. I think it's obviously it's hurt us now because of the situation that we're in my opinion. I think that it also messes with the sort of group intellect of this country when we just go after people who are famous, who we've all heard of, to put them in powerful positions. We do it in politics a lot, not just at the presidential level. This is one time. But now, I mean, listen, this was the Golden Globe Awards. She gave a stirring speech. She tied it, being the first black woman, to Sidney Poitier winning it in 1964. And she also said, in winning the Cecil B. DeMille, in the year of the woman, how great this is. Period. Right? Done. Move on. Right? Now, though, you give a good speech and you're famous. Oh, she's running for president. Now, she's also not denying that there's interest. There's not a machine out there saying, Oprah Winfrey will never run for president. No, even Stedman Graham, her longtime partner, has said, oh, no, it's think about it.
Yeah. Well, and on the celebrity part, in politics, even you who, eat and drink politics, you look at name recognition. Remember when Dennis Kucinich ran for president, I'm talking about, there was that sense of, no one knows who he is.
Right.
That you need a threshold of celebrity, in quotes, of name recognition in order to have a chance.
You do and you don't. I agree with that. That's why incumbents win all the time, because people in Missouri have heard the name Claire McCaskill, and they're just going to vote for an incumbent. It's changing a little bit because they're finding different ways to pervade that block, but still, I think that it's really an important thing, and that's what celebrity brings somebody. But Barack Obama, nobody had ever heard that name before, and what a crazy name that was. So he was able to get past that sort of thing. And Jimmy Carter, I mean, that was the famous Time magazine Jimmy Who front cover. So there is this idea that that you need it helps certainly, but you don't need it.
Meantime, the Trump administration continues to lease these public lands for mineral exploitation. Those who've listened to this show know that's really a major issue for me.
Abhorrent that they're allowed to do that.
And they want to now, and they have put forward major... The administration has granted waivers that will allow for unprecedented offshore oil exploration.
Places that it hasn't had, literally unprecedented.
Yeah, and so states like Florida and California are going to challenge that in court. But you see this, it's 1950 all over again.
Yeah.
And as you know, a lot of these environmental regulations have been lifted, and there might be those who are listening now who go, yeah, but there are too many environmental regulations. Well, they've really been lifted beyond sort of any kind of a reasonable threshold. And the coal and nuclear industries. The most recent thing I saw was Rick Perry, who is the energy secretary, having put forward a plan to prop up, that is through price supports, the coal and nuclear industries, forcing major electrical grids to use oil and coal instead of any kind of sustainable energy.
And that was a promise that Donald Trump made to big coal when he ran for president. But big coal is getting smaller and smaller. It's little coal.
And it's getting smaller and smaller because it's not economically viable anymore. But instead of letting the free market decide this, which is essentially marginalize coal further and further, they're actually going to produce price supports, or they want to. But what happened? The court knocked them down.
It's not necessarily the court. It's a Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, which is, and it's made up of Donald Trump appointees largely. Even they thought, come on, this is crazy. You can't do that. And what's interesting, too, this is kind of like affirmative action for the coal industry. And the Republicans for so long have fought affirmative action. Yet when it pleases them, when it comes to energy subsidies and things like coal price supports, then they're okay with it. And it is a little bit of doublespeak on their part.
Well, again, and I go back to the free market. It's, as usual, it's not the free market. So when the free market doesn't favor you, you produce price supports. You force coal and nuke down our throats.
Right.
Same is true in the beef industry, by the way. The beef industry has enormous price supports. If you were to just let the beef industry sit out there with free market, hamburgers would be way too expensive for anybody to eat them.
Is that true? I didn't know that.
Or much more expensive. I shouldn't say anybody. I mean, I know we love our hamburgers. But anyway, you're right. There's a double standard. Leave me with something lighter.
Oh, okay. Well, we were going to talk about movie theaters.
Oh, yeah.
And what prompted this was there's a movie theater called the Lincoln Square or Lincoln Plaza Theater in front of Lincoln Center, New York City, Columbus Circle area, Columbus Avenue area.
Close to the Trump Tower.
Close to the Trump Tower, exactly. And it's been there forever. And they show old movies, and they show independent movies. And it closed on January 1st because the landlord said, no, we're going to raise your rent, and the people who've owned it are in their 90s, and they've owned it forever, and they just couldn't afford it. And it made me think about whether or not the experience of going to movie theaters is going to die and go away if people are not going to go see the movies at the theater anymore. And because I've always been wrong about this. I've always been wrong about was wrong about people watching television. I was wrong about landlines.
What were you wrong about people watching television?
I thought that television was not going to go away as quickly as it did. I just couldn't believe that. Newspapers as well. I couldn't believe that the newspaper as we know it, that people would hold on to and read, that people would prefer to read it on a tablet or whatever. So I'm wrong about that stuff all the time. So I'm going to go out on a limb and say, no, people are going to continue to go to the movies, but I'll probably be wrong.
Well, the movie-going experience is, A, expensive, because once you've paid for the tickets, which are expensive on their own, but B, paid for parking in areas that are not New York, where you've not taken a subway or whatever, public transport, I think it makes it something you think twice about. If you're taking your other half and the kids, or if you're just taking the kids, it's still very expensive.
It's an expensive experience, and it's much more expensive in New York, where this theater is closing, in Los Angeles, where we are. But I'm not so sure that in Plano, Texas, or in Ottumwa, Iowa, when they go to the cinema there, that it's that expensive. Parking is usually free because it's in an outdoor lot, and you just walk into the theater. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, you're right. I mean
this is an industry that is not solely dependent on New York and Los Angeles, even though people in New York and Los Angeles think about it that way.
And theater owners make a lot of money on the concessions. Okay. So there's such great markup on the concessions. That's where they make their money. I was an usher when I was 16. And
which theater?
at the Studio 123. That was the multiplex in Washington, Washington, D.C., where I grew up. It was right across from Sears. What happened to Sears? Oh, yeah. And the same thing happened to Studio 123.
Right.
But the manager always told me when I was working the concession stand, when somebody asks for a Coke
right,
or whatever drink, always respond with large.
Right. And even today, they say, would you like to make that a medium for 50 cents more?
So there you go.
Even if I want to make it a medium, I always say no because I know I'm being played.
Yeah. On the popcorn, I just can't lay off the big one.
Right. I always go for a small because I know I'm going to eat it all anyway.
No, exactly. I've eaten it all usually as I watch the trailers.
Right.
It's unbelievable.
Right. The candy's definitely. If I get candy, it's gone by the trailers.
So those things you can't really replicate at home, although you can sort of replicate at home. Now the home theater experience, I'm just talking about the theater experience, meaning in your living room.
Right.
You know, the audio's gotten better, the picture's gotten better. You can replicate certain things, but still big Disney movies, these big tentpole movies, the action films.
Blockbusters. And,
That's why Hollywood is leaning that way, because people can't replicate that experience in their home.
Yeah, that's interesting. No, that's a good point. I hadn't thought of that. So the product, the options that we're given tend to lean still towards seeing it in the theater. It's the smaller movies that don't.
Yeah, they're serving up those options to you based on your inability to replicate it anywhere else and sort of your desire to see it in a bigger environment, right? But indie films, now indie film audiences will tend to go, hey, this just came out. I hear it's, 3 Billboards or whatever the movie, these sort of indie films. They have an audience that will go to the theater to see them.
Right.
But then I just was in the theater, and we'll wrap up, but I was just in the theater, and because I like to go to the theater. I really like to see the movies in the theater. And some people were talking behind me, and I thought, oh, yeah, this is why I don't like the theater.
Right. Well, yeah. No, the reason you don't like the theater is you're not allowed to check the scores. In your home, you could have your cell phone next to you, which also I think sucks about being home, too, because you don't it doesn't have your full attention like a movie would.
I do put the cell phone away when I'm in the theater, but you're right. At home, it's harder.
Right. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. So, and annoying people have been at the theater since we've been going to the movies.
Yeah.
And we've still gone back to the movies. So I don't know that. I mean, that is an inconvenience and it's not great, but mostly people aren't annoying.
And speaking of the movies, Michael, let's leave with another chance for you to identify this film. I'll tell you what, just identify the person speaking.
Okay, this is unfair because we did this before the show started.
No, I'll include the stuff that we did before.
Okay.
Here we go.
Name's Bond. James Bond.
Okay. Just to flex
one more.
To flex my muscle. I'll hear it one more time. I'm going to flex my knowledge muscle here, my trivia muscle.
Hold on.
And take it.
Name's Bond. James Bond.
George Lazenby.
No! Not George Lazenby. I thought you were going to get it after hearing it the second time. Pierce Brosnan.
Oh, Pierce Brosnan.
Yes.
Right. His best James Bond movie was when he was in the Thomas Crown Affair, which wasn't a James Bond movie. I liked him. He's still around, I guess. But my favorite Bond was Roger Moore. He was my Bond.
He was kind of the smart-ass Bond.
Yeah, he was. He was. I liked that Bond. My fear when you play these movie clips is the one that I absolutely should have gotten, which was Anchorman. I didn't get, but I'm upset about that.
Well, then you're going to love...
When I kill, it's on the specific orders of my government, and those I kill are themselves killers.
Oh, come, Mr. Bond, you disappoint me. You get as much fulfillment out of killing as I do, so why don't you admit it?
I admit killing you would be a pleasure.
That's George Lazenby.
That's Roger Moore.
I was just doing it because, well.
I love you, though, Michael Shure, and I will edit it so it makes you seem like you didn't miss any of them. Or I'll edit it so it makes you seem like you missed all of them.
That's fine. One or the other, and I'm still happy to be here.
We are grateful for your attendance, always. Ladies and gentlemen, the Fast 15 has concluded. Give it up for Michael Shure, everybody.
Oh, thank you. My God, it's even louder and more enthusiastic in 2018. Thank you all so much.
You're listening to The Edge with Mark Thompson. Join us on the web at edge-show.com.
Oh, okay. Let me just, It's just something. There we go. Yeah. I want to thank you for all the ways that you support my friends on the Edge podcast. And if you haven't already, why don't you show your support and subscribe? What's the matter with you? Go to Edge Show. Oh, shit, it's Edge Dash. What's with the dash? Stupid. All right, I want to thank you for all the ways that you support my friends on the Edge podcast. To show your support and leave something on their website, edge-show.com. Stupid. Why is there a dash?
edge-show.com. This is The Edge.
Grace Baldridge is here.
Hi, guys.
Grace is from the world of TYT. She does Pop Trigger. She does the main TYT shows. She does her own podcast, which is called...
Murder with Friends is both a YouTube show and a podcast.
Okay. Sorry, it is a YouTube show.
You can watch us or listen to us. I think a lot of people, what I gather, is that they'll put on the YouTube show and then do something else around their house. So it's a bit of a hybrid.
But it works in either medium.
Yeah, either medium.
That's good.
Even though I painstakingly try and prepare clips to show as B-roll, they're like, no, I'm just going to clean my house and ignore that.
My girlfriend only listens to murder podcasts, or in your case, watching a murder show. I did hip her to your show.
True crime is a very big market these days.
She won't listen to this show because nobody dies. I mean, yet.
Just wait for it.
It's interesting because it has sort of there's been a true crime resurgence. I've been interested in true crime. I would look up this website called crimelibrary.com. When I was in 8th and 9th grade, I did I think it was my 10th grade research project on the Zodiac, and I became incredibly paranoid that he, because they never caught him, that he was 100% looking at my IP address and coming to hunt me down because I presented some compelling 10th grade theories. And so it's interesting now, I think around the time of Making a Murderer and then the Jinx, you saw that people liked, or at least had this fascination with darker sides of history. And I took this film studies class in college, and it's so interesting to see about how, gangster movies in the 1930s and how that was a reflection of how people were feeling with regards to the government. And there were these rogue gentlemen sticking it to the man. And I wonder in time how we will look back on the resurgence of true crime in the 2010s and what that spoke to about the psyche of American audiences.
That's a really cool take, that somehow it reflects the culture at the time. Of course, it makes sense.
Has to. I mean, we're looking back on the O.J. Simpson. I know that it has something to do with, it was the 20th anniversary of the Jean-Benet Ramsey being murdered recently, and the O.J. Simpson trial. So I know that some of it is timely, but I also think that, and then the Law and Order Menendez brothers review mini series or something. I don't know what it was.
Yeah.
There's got to be a correlation to some sort of sentiment in America right now that watching true crime taps into.
Well, I also think it's just there's a lot of good storytelling going on right now.
That's true.
It's a great frame for a story. Mm-hmm. And that's why it works as fictional television, episodic TV so well too, because each week you have a new story with a beginning, middle, and end. So I think, one of the things that podcasts and all the new media bring is new ways to tell stories, but I think stories of murders have always been interesting to people,
But what's interesting...
Since Oedipus, stories of murders.
Yeah.
The high-profile stories, I think, are interesting, and as you say, maybe from a storytelling standpoint, because you know the outcome. We know O.J. Simpson was acquitted, and then he was found guilty in the civil trial. We know a lot of the evidence. We knew the evidence, and we knew the guilty verdicts in the case of the Menendez kids, and so on. So we start with something that we know, yet we're fascinated to follow the bouncing ball, both on stuff that we know and then new evidence that we didn't know, or some backstory or drama that we didn't know. When you put it all together, there's a tapestry of stuff that we know, and there's tapestry of stuff that we don't know, but it all falls into that category of true crime.
And you know what I'm wondering just now is there is this prevalence of fake news. People, the fake news, this is fake news, this isn't real. There's people have a trouble trusting which sites can you believe, which news stories are credible. And when we look back at true crime, I mean, just in the title, true crime, there is facts, there's forensic, there's evidence. So perhaps there's something in the comfort of when you look back at cases, you are examining evidence that, that can be debated in a courtroom, but certain things are undisputed. And perhaps that is what people are getting into. But also, I think that it could be as simple as just really good storytelling. I think back on when I first listened to Serial, and Serial was definitely on the cusp of this wave of true crime. And I was absolutely captivated. I was driving to Berkeley to see my girlfriend, and I took the long way because I wanted to keep listening to Serial.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think storytelling is what people crave, I think, in a lot of ways. You know, there's the in-between world of like Dateline. It's not murders that people have heard about, but it's told in this very
it's a yarn
formatted storytelling way. And I think, you know, we get so dramatic about such little shit these days.
Oh, yeah.
You know, that I think there's also that appeal of like, this is a real thing, you know. This isn't superficial, this is a murder, you know, and therefore there's some extra
gravitas.
Emotional gravitas to any of these stories that make it feel not superficial, too, I think.
Grace is here to help us solve the world's problems. She's also, though, here, and I thought...
I have this unsolved murder that I've been wanting to...
Yeah. So, by the way, if anybody has a murder with friends would be a great place to...
Not commit it.
But maybe make them aware of it. Maybe there's been a murder in your town. Maybe there's a murder you're curious about. Do you solicit the public for murders that they're interested in?
Absolutely. I definitely look at the comment section, and people tweet at me cases all the time to look into.
Stuff they're planning or stuff they're...
We've had Josh Mankiewicz on from Dateline, and he's reviewed some of the better ways to off your spouse or this person that you wanted.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
And get rid of your phone is another piece of it.
Well, that's it's really not about how you off them. It's about how you cover certain aspects of your electronic life, the electronic footprint. And then also, this is a grim thing, but I've just started the thought, so I'll finish it. Josh says if you could bury a different limb of whomever, your victim, if you could bury a different limb in different counties or states, then you're pretty much guaranteed a long runway before they even get close to you, because they just...
Yeah, if you mess around with jurisdictions,
exactly.
That's where things get so confusing and wires get crossed.
Fantastic tip.
It sounds like Grace is...
This is not what my show's about. We just talk about historical true crime cases. And I'd be like, I should listen and watch Murder with Friends to learn how to murder my friends. Do not tune in for that reason.
It's not called Murder Your Friends. It's called Murder with Friends. All right. But Pop Trigger's very popular on the TYT network, and of course, Grace has been on TYT for... How long have you been there? I want to say a couple of years now, right?
Yeah, probably about 2 years at this point.
Yeah. Anyway, so what got her here today is that once I'd heard that she'd driven to Alaska from Southern California.
Nice.
I absolutely had to hear that story. And we will get to that story in a second. But we were talking about cell phones, and you mentioned something we were talking about just the culture. And I think it's worth noting, because I try to pass along little morsels to our audience. It's like a little light going off. And this is what happened when Grace mentioned this. The RSVP, the no-show and RSVP, has changed because of cell phone technology. You're in touch, and this is a point that Grace made right before we went on the air, and I just wanted to, before I forgot, I wanted to pass it along. You made a great point. What was your point, Grace?
Well, I think that there's a certain level of accountability that we've lost with cell phone technology, because it is so easy to flake and tell someone that you're flaking. You know, it makes me think of early dates between my parents or my grandparents. If one of them didn't show, it would be very alarming. And they would have had to go a pretty roundabout way to reach them. You couldn't text someone, 10 minutes, 15 minutes before you're supposed to meet, because they'd already be on their way, you would assume. You couldn't just call their home phone and be like, I'm not going to be able to make it. You'd have to go. And I think that's a certain level of accountability that you just don't have these days. You can RSVP to something, and then, the night of, or the morning after, be like, hey, sorry I wasn't able to make it. Right. My fish tank was dirty and I had to clean it.
I don't think people just straight up forget, because there's so many messages crossing their bow. Like
there are a lot of
I did
Facebook
a screening
stuff
for one of these docs last year, and it was like anyone who I invited through like direct messages who said yes, total no-show. Like it was like a complete...
Wait, through a direct
like
message?
Twitter DM, like
okay.
people I communicated to that way, where they said, yeah, I'll be there, They completely forgot, and it was like universal across the board, but emails, people who had it's like, I think the formality of the correspondence even means something at this point, because a Twitter DM goes through you like a tweet.
I agree. Like Twitter DM and even text messages, that's the thing about people don't like Evites, but Evite does this thing. I don't even know what it is, but they send out reminders.
They harangue you is what they do.
And it's really like...
They guilt you.
Yeah. And so it's kind of a good way to make sure that it stays on your radar. Because that's interesting. I thought you were going to say that the technology actually makes forgetting harder.
No, I think it makes it easier.
Well, but it depends really within the technology which method of communication you've used. Because, as I say, Evite will remind you. If you put it on your schedule will remind you. But if it's just a DM, then yeah, you're right. It's just lost over the.
And we're so bombarded with things that we could attend or offers. I just last night I was cleaning out my email subscriptions. So anytime you make a purchase, usually if you're new to a website, if you check out as a guest, you're automatically subscribed to their email list. And so every couple months, my email will just get totally cluttered of all these offers for events or for freebie stuff that at the time I think like, oh, I would totally go to one of these, and then you don't. And then because I think our minds can become very cluttered with all this noise that we have from all the technology that's just at our fingertips, you forget about the important events that you really can't miss, that you need to make time for. I'm really bad at this, but something that does help me is I have a physical calendar, like a big wall calendar that is in the kitchen of my house, and so and it's right by my coffee machine, and I need my coffee in the morning. Mama needs that caffeine, and when I go and get coffee, I'm staring at a physical thing that I have written in myself of my schedule, and that's. Unfortunately, I wish I was better. I know there's so many people that can compartmentalize. My girlfriend has like this calendar in her brain, and it'll go into her phone and she'll remember that. And I'm just not one of those people.
Yeah, once I write it down, then I remember it.
Doing the act of writing it down. But these days, if it's just a mindless click, think of all the mindless things that we click. So if you're clicking, you're RSVPing to something, or you're responding yes, and that's one of the 30-something text messages you'll send that day. You don't remember.
Yeah, or emails for me. Like I get lots of emails in a day, and there'll be somewhere like, okay, this is going to take me a while to compose, so I don't want to return it right away. And now, next thing I know, it's 20 emails upstream, and I've pretty much spaced it.
All right, I want to get into the drive to Alaska. Now you have a girlfriend who's now a fiance, right?
That happened on the trip.
Now, that's cool. Okay, we'll get to that. So how long have you guys been going out?
We have been together,
seeing each other,
for about 4 years.
Is she your one and only, or were you knocking around a lot before her?
She's not. Well, she is my one and only. It's so corny, but I just think she's the coolest person. Like, she's just my favorite person to hang out with, and just the best.
Well, I'm assuming that now.
Yes.
But I guess what I'm getting at was your dating history.
She is not the only person I've ever dated. But she was the first person I ever introduced to my parents as my girlfriend. I don't know why that is. I haven't really analyzed that so much, but my dad had always said with my mom that when you know, and it was absolutely the case with Lizzy. I'd seen other people before, and of course, being a queer person, exploring your sexuality is just a roller coaster of emotions. And so breakups and all this stuff, and being in the closet and being secretive and all that stuff. And there's a place in my heart for the people that helped me along my journey. But there was something about Lizzy that we met in college in a course called Contemporary Controversies in Feminism that I took because I'd already written a paper about women in film that I knew I could turn in for the final paper. And I didn't even think about how many gay people would be in that class. That was not even a thing. It wasn't even you'd think that's oh, I'm going to take this class, so I will date. That was not my thought process. But we met in class, and
it was probably everybody else's thought process though who took that class.
Yeah, right? Everyone. What I didn't realize, we're sitting around introducing ourselves the first day, and all these girls are just sizing each other up.
Wow.
And there I was. But no, I met Lizzy, and I just sort of knew. I was like, this is kind of game changer.
Can I ask you a lesbian question? This is my.
How dare you?
I think you may be my favorite lesbian, even though I haven't known you for.
There's Ellen, right?
No, yeah, but Ellen, and I know Ellen to say hello. I don't know Ellen to text her right now and get her over here.
Ellen, you don't want to.
I like you better than Ellen already.
Let me start with the class.
Okay.
When you're taking that class, and you said that there are all these women and they're checking each other out. Are there the super feminine women along with the super
yeah,
you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, look at me. You guys can't look at me, but I'll just describe myself. I kind of look like I'm always going to a softball game. If that gives you an idea of my lesbian chic style.
I have to also say, for those who will not bother to look Grace Baldridge up on the internet, she's super cute. It works for you. You're super cute. But I don't mean to make you uncomfortable. But
no, it's okay. Yeah. I'm sort of a grown-up tomboy, is how I would describe myself.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay.
So
there's that look.
But what's interesting is that this school that I went to is a small conservative liberal arts school in North Carolina. So North Carolina is great for a lot of reasons. One of them is not being the most welcoming to LGBT people, but there is a vibrant community that persists there for sure. But I will just say that when I was at Elon, and most of the people in this class, like, yeah, it was Elon. I wasn't presenting how I felt comfortable. I was super feminine. Even though I was out, it was a journey to present in a way that felt authentic to me because I didn't see it. Like, I saw a lot of conventionally feminine girls, and that's totally fine. A lot of girls feel comfortable dressing that way. That's where they feel the most empowered and strongest. But for me, it felt like a costume every day. It was a chore. So
is your girlfriend?
She is very feminine. And what's interesting is that we had sort of a flip, which was that when she came out, she actually, so she was very traditionally feminine. That's how she feels comfortable. And then when she came out, she started dressing a little bit more alternative, I suppose, because that was she was in a group of other queer kids, and she wanted to like fit in, I suppose, and she wanted to dress how they were dressing, but it really didn't make her feel comfortable. She feels the most comfortable dressing in what we would sort of associate with like a straight girl, I guess, which it doesn't make it like clothing is so not indicative of something.
That's my question I have too. I don't want to interrupt you, but
well, yeah. So then what happened with me is that like I came out and I was still, it was a journey for me to start dressing, I would say like more like my clothing, I wear boys clothing, like that's more masculine center. That was more of a journey for me than like the initial coming out. It's so weird, like how dress contributes to how someone reveals themselves to the world. Like it was scarier for me to be able to walk into a room and for people to be like, probably gay, than it was for me to be like, oh, I know Grace, she is gay. Like I'm not sure what the psychology is behind that.
The feeling judged of it.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. But so now after in time, like Lizzy got more comfortable in just owning the fact that I would say a lot / everyone that she meets assumes when she says that she's engaged, they ask who is the lucky man. Right. And then she's like, curveball, her name is Grace. And then I show up to her, she's a lawyer, I show up to like her legal Christmas parties and I'm like, huge dyke, what's up? Like you cannot hide that. And you know, so it's all about just becoming more comfortable within yourself. So to answer your question in a roundabout way, Mark, when we were all in this class, and I think we were all just like sort of sizing each other up. I don't think we were like, we're not like the horniest class at Elon. Like we weren't just like, oh, who's leaving here? Like, but when we were sizing each other up, I think that we were all sort of, you know, there was a lot of people in that class that were figuring out their sexuality. And on top of figuring that out myself, I ended up finding my fiance. So, yeah.
So my question is you were talking about it in terms of like your fiance being more traditionally feminine.
Yeah.
Do you see how you present yourself as more masculine, or is it just a different expression of femininity? Are you eschewing femininity?
I don't know. I would actually say that I am more comfortable when people are like, it's hard to say. Like, I think it's a combination of both. Like, I'm super comfortable if someone's like, especially on the internet in the YouTube comment section, if they're like, she looks like a dude. I'm like, sweet, like, awesome. I don't care. That's sort of a little bit of the goal. Like, I feel comfortable.
Right.
As far as like eschewing femininity, I think my friends would probably say that yes, because whenever just to be super frank, whenever there's a photo that like for whatever reason my boobs are accentuated, like just in the way that like if it's a group photo, I don't like that.
Yeah. Okay.
So I sort of view myself as like she pronouns are great, but I'm a bit of a gender medium. Like I don't really love feminine things, but I don't love being fully on like the masculine side of things. I like my role as feeling a little bit in the middle of all of that. And yeah, that kind of answers your question. I know it's sort of vague and confusing.
Well, it was a personal question, you know, so it was, I thought it was a good answer.
But it's been a journey to get here. You know, it's been kind of a journey to feel really comfortable with myself and how I present and how different people perceive it, and being so cool with that. Because for a while, you know, some people are going to view me as, I don't know. Sorry, I'm being...
Well, no, people bring a lot of baggage to whatever. Our favorite pastime is judging, right? Mm-hmm. We feel better about ourselves when we're judging other people. I experience it with the vegan thing. And the minute you say vegan, it's like, oh, Jesus. Or you get, wow, good for you, you know. I mean, but I guess what I'm saying is, and I don't mean to put it in the same universe because the sexuality thing is something that is a real. I mean, look, there are people who've been brutalized and who've suffered at the hands of real abuse because of their sexuality. It's an absolute abhorrent fact of our society. But I guess I'm just saying that, you know,
and for you, it's a big part of your identity too. Mm-hmm. It is what you tend to put out there. You know?
Sure,
not in a bad way, but that's, you know, it is genuinely part of your identity. It seems,
right,
or at least animal rights.
Yeah, you're right. And I guess when you feel sort of that there's an aggrieved party, in this case, you know, all of these creatures, you do feel like you have to rep for them a little bit. So I probably do put it out there more than, you know.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. I think it's sort of a dynamic of people putting you into a box and sometimes feeling super comfortable into that box. But then when you want to move away or do something a little bit different, sometimes people, the general public, are a little slow to move with you, and that could be a little bit frustrating.
Did you come out in college? You said the coming out process was sort of difficult, or deciding when to do it.
My coming out story is a little strange because I came out at different times to different people, so it wasn't one watershed moment. I know some people, you know, had told the whole family at Thanksgiving and made a Facebook post, and everyone knew, and you can timestamp it like it was on this day. Right. I was coming out to some people when I was a teenager, and I was coming out to some people when I was in my 20s. So it's kind of a spectrum of things.
And how did you distinguish between those that you came out with as a teenager and those that you came out in your 20s? Like who's in what group, for example?
It was who was around me when I was having a breakdown. was pretty much what happened. Like I think I'm pretty sure the first person I came out to, we were going for a walk, and she was talking to me about she and her boyfriend were going through some problems, and for whatever reason I had this buildup in my chest of like I have to speak this thing into the universe, like I'm gay, you know? And so we're walking, and we just sit on this park bench, and she's talking about her boy problems, and I was like, I think I'm gay, like out of nowhere. And she had the best response, which really primed me for feeling better moving forward, where she's like, okay, I know this feels like a really big deal to you right now, but we were talking about me and Stuart. And I was like, and it was actually amazing, and I was really stunned. She's like, you know that we all love you and your family's going to love you. Like, no one cares. So can we just, like, that's great, but we'll talk about that another time. It was great because she covered all the bases, which is like, we all love you. Everyone loves you. This isn't a problem. Right. And like, don't make it a big deal. Like, this doesn't need to be a big deal. The thing we don't like is your self-absorption. Yeah. And I mean, my coming out journey is like all over the place. I like went back in the closet for a year.
Now, why did you do that?
I lived in Kentucky.
I see.
When did you come out to yourself?
Ooh, that is a great question. I don't know if I've ever been asked that before.
J.Elvis is here for the great questions.
I'm the closer.
I think I probably came out to myself. When I saw Moulin Rouge, this is so weird. I saw Moulin Rouge with this girl that I was very into at the time, but I didn't really know what it was. And I thought and we were watching Moulin Rouge, and I thought Nicole Kidman was so stunning and just heartbreaking and beautiful. And like that performance just really moved me. And then I remember identifying that I had the same feelings that I had for Nicole Kidman's character of Satine for my friend that was sleeping over. But even though I could identify that and I could be like, I love this girl, it was still a ways before I was able to come to the conclusion of, and I love girls. Like, because for a while it was like, I love this girl. Like, that's not weird. I love this girl. But then making the transition to like, I think I only love girls. Like, that was a little bit of a awakening, I suppose.
And you were pushing away, do you think, initially when you said I like this girl, like you were kind of reluctantly coming to the I like girls as you think you were pushing away the other feeling of
I definitely had moments of I would have these weird moments of reassuring myself that perhaps it was just this girl, and then I would be straight every other time, because I would, watch again another Nicole Kidman movie, Cold Mountain. I'd be like, I think both Nicole Kidman and Jude Law are both attractive, so therefore there is a very good chance I am a straighty. And then, so I would have these moments of like, it's probably not a thing, and then you just sort of realize it's like this slow seeping process that at first feels very foreboding, and then in time it feels like this wash, this revelation that like you understand yourself in a profound way. I would liken it to, the first time you guys ever fell in love, like that crazy feeling.
Yeah.
that you will never forget, even though I'm not sure if you're with those people today. Like you still remember that. And that's how I would liken understanding my sexuality, was like, whoa, like I can feel this. Like I can experience love like I see in movies, and it's with a girl. Like this is a wild twist of events.
Yeah. I remember, though, feeling like I was really into hot girls on television. Like I'm talking about like I Dream of Jeannie, and Quincy Jones's now wife Peggy Lipton was on a show, and she's like this really hip Mod Squad. Like I'm old, so all these shows are not on the air anymore. But my point is that like, and I was young. I was like in second and third grade, maybe. I mean, I'm super young. And I had the feeling, I didn't have a sexual feeling, but I just felt like, wow, I really love that girl. She's really, and so but you didn't have that then, you're saying.
When I was like really little?
Yeah.
When I was really little, there were, I don't know if I could understand it, but when I was really little, I would always be Simba, and I would make this girl Diana, who I thought was the coolest girl. But then you look back and you're like, there was a reason why you thought she was the coolest girl. She would be Nala, and we'd play house.
Right.
And I'd be the husband. So like little things like that were like,
right.
Yeah, there were signs.
Yeah.
There were signs.
Yeah. And also, and this is the other thing, and the reason that it's parallel is a little tough, because you're dealing with such a societal norm that you're trying to conform to, because kids are, and even adults, we're just trying to fit in. That's why it's so important, society's stance on gay, lesbian, etc. issues, on minorities, because they want to feel, all of us want to feel a part of society. I experience it too, again, on the vegan thing. Mm-hmm. People ice you out because they go, oh, he can't join us because it's a steakhouse or whatever the hell it is. And all you want to do is fit in, and you just want to go, hey man, I'll have a martini and a salad. Don't worry about it. I want to join the guys.
I think it just comes down to, you can't diminish how powerful representation and visibility are. And I know that it feels like every story sometimes is like, oh, there's a new gay character on this, there's a new gay, and like you feel like representation is sufficient. But just today on Pop Trigger, we were talking about, there's this YouTuber and beauty guru named Gigi Gorgeous, and she posted on her Instagram account that she and her girlfriend have welcomed a baby through surrogacy. And even though I don't really follow either of them closely on social media, although I know they do good work, I was incredibly moved by just seeing that they were raising a kid. And I was like, why is this affecting me? And I was like, okay, it's because my gay role models, like Ellen and Portia, decided not to have kids. Rosie O'Donnell, I don't know. I know she has kids, but I know her marital life has been a little bit sort of tumultuous, which I don't want to sound like I'm judging that at all whatsoever. But when you're growing up, you just want to see like a stable family that might look like something you can aspire to. And I just didn't have that. I really didn't see that. And so visibility and representation are just incredibly powerful.
I've been really late to the party in understanding that. It's only in the last couple of years that I've really started to see the cause and effect of people starting to see that someone who they can truly identify with on screen and in the media. And I always sort of, I think, poo-pooed that as truly important. Not verbally, but in my head, I'm going,
just rampant Twitter rant.
No, I was never talking it down, but I never really got how important it was.
Yeah, it can be very impactful
for a little kid to see somebody.
Things that you think are unattainable, you just don't see them. So because you don't see them, you don't know what you could aspire for.
Right. Well, I mean, it's true of the black community. I mean, all they see is white people on TV growing up, and now this next generation, now they see black families on TV. That's why Cosby was such a big deal. Blah blah blah. But that blah 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 is important, because that mass media influx, if it's all white, it does have implicit in it, you're not part of this.
Yeah.
It's not an explicit message necessarily, but that kid is carrying that around. I think it's a tough.
Yeah, and one of the things I've learned, even doing I do another podcast with Andy Kindler, and we talk about mental health issues a lot, just because it's part of the conversation with Andy Kindler, and the response that we've gotten has reinforced something that I'm also starting to learn, is just how fucking alone people feel.
Oh my God.
And how weird how unique they feel in their about their anxieties and their and if they do see it in somebody else or just someone comfortable to talk about it, it provides relief for them.
Yeah.
And again, it's something that I probably discounted before until I've really had interaction with the cause and effect of it with people.
How did you end up in LA?
So I moved to Los Angeles because I wanted to pursue stand-up comedy. And I moved right after graduation. I got a one-way plane ticket. I had done some summer programs out here through the university, and I kind of just moved. I didn't really know what I was going to do. I worked as a PA on Whose Line Is It Anyway for a while, and that was so much fun. It was great. The thing with sort of PA life is that you can kind of get sucked into it and do it forever. And then I worked at Pie Town Productions. I was an office PA for them.
Pie Town does what shows?
They do House Hunters.
Right.
Yeah, they do House Hunters, and I worked for them. I painted their parking lot. That was not on my job description, but that's fine. But it was it's a PA grind. You do it. Your hours are shitty. The pay's not good. I would eat 7-Eleven sandwich. I'd get one 7-Eleven sandwich because they're huge and it's garbage food, and it'd be $7, and that would be my lunch and dinner. You split it in half. And then
let me just ask you about House Hunters for a minute.
What do you want to know?
House Hunters, you know how House Hunters works, Josh, is that it's an oddly riveting program because you start watching, let's say J.Elvis Weinstein's looking for a house, and you see J.Elvis and his wife, and they're looking at different properties, and they have these properties featured, and they'll show you 3 properties, and they take you around these properties, and you kind of go, that's just kind of cool. And then you see yourself, either it's aspirational because you're thinking, wow, I wish I could live in a house like that, or you're thinking, oh, that is a house I could live in. It's $200,000, and there are a couple of bedrooms, and blah 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 blah. And there's a fountain outside, and there's a water feature in the back too, and all this shit, right? So there's 1, 2, 3, and then at the end of the show, they tell you which, J.Elvis and the wife sit down, which one they chose. And so you sit through that process. Am I right, Grace, so far? And at the end, you want to see what they decide upon.
Yeah.
I assume it's fairly rigged, though.
And that's what I'm getting to.
It's incredibly rigged. Go tell them, Mark.
No. That's what I'm getting to, which is, okay, now I've laid it out. Now, Grace, tell me how rigged it is.
The house has been bought before the taping even begins. Okay. The house is bought. They work with realtors or real estate agents, and they, sort of interview clients, couples, to see if they'd be good for the show. And
so they're not even looking for a house anymore.
No, they're just random houses.
We're looking for somebody who just bought a house.
Yeah, they're looking for people
to look at 2 others.
Yeah, to pretend to look at 2 others, and
so in a sense, they're actors.
Ish, but they're not. Sometimes they are.
They're not professional actors,
but they're not professional actors. They're just
acting like they're looking at houses.
Yeah, and they get prompts and stuff like that. So, for example, each house has to be characterized by certain buzz adjectives. So, for example, one would be the rustic cabin, and you have to refer to it as the rustic cabin and use words that align with that when you are describing it, so that it makes it distinctive to the audience. And when the editors are showing B-roll, that gives them something to work with. You can't just describe this house is nice. It's really, I like the windows. It's pretty. You can't use words like that.
They know to use the pine cone B-roll.
But they'll have a producer with a list of words and what they're trying to get.
Right. How long did it take them to shoot one episode? Can they get all 3 houses and everything done in a day?
I don't think so, because it's kind of a blur. But I remember
it was a long time ago. I know, but still.
Yeah, I remember that we would be on set for one house for a day. I could be wrong though. Maybe they're but it's one house and you get everything in that day. But maybe they can figure it out and do 2 after lunch.
And of course
but you got to do a whole company move. I mean, it's not a big company, I imagine.
It's pretty small. It's like a van.
Yeah. Well, no, that's why. The advantage of these shows, and they run on second-tier cablers. Although I think that's Travel Channel, maybe.
It's HGTV.
HGTV. Okay, yeah. That's a big network. But anyway, point is that the fees, license fees, the amount that you get for selling an episode is smaller. So you try to keep the budgets modest. But that's why I asked you to do it all in one day. Then they took it, and then they went for international house hunters. And that was kind of a new aspirational thing, because now you're looking at a house in Mallorca. And even if it's just a condo, you're thinking, wow, I would like to live in Mallorca, though. That would be cool. I don't give a damn whether it's a condo.
My breaking point for working for Pie Town, which, the people there were incredibly nice. I had a lot of good experiences. I'm in touch with some of the people I still worked with, but, just set life, if any of your listeners are familiar with it, they know it's a grind. It's thankless. And I think it was for Fixer Upper. it was Fixer Upper or maybe House Hunters renovations, and there had been some conflicting information, and they sent out an email or something like that said, hey, when we're shooting on this day, make sure you wear shorts. It's going to be really hot. And I was like, all right, like get prepared for hot weather. So I show up, I'm in like t-shirt shorts, and then this one guy walks past me on set. He's like, I hope you brought socks. I was like, why? He's like, oh, it's crawling with insects on the inside of the house. And I was like, no, I didn't bring socks. And then I put in all the lunch order. Lunch was my main task as a PA. You always want to make sure that people find parking and that they get lunch. That's like a huge important thing. And so I had ahead of time, I'd gotten everyone's lunch order. We were going to Corner Bakery, and I had figured out what sandwich I wanted, which was the highlight of my day. Like if I'm going to be working on set and it's going to be hot, I'm going to do the best I can. I will look forward to my sandwich that is paid for by the company. Free food. Hell yeah. So about 23 people on set, 22 sandwiches arrived. The one sandwich that was missing was mine, which is, I was like, all right, this is not a big deal. It's not a big deal. It's just a sandwich. I'm not.
Keep it together.
Yeah, I was like, it's not a big deal. So then I called the restaurant. I was like, hey, seems like you guys forgot a sandwich. Anyway, you guys could drop it off like sometime later today. I'll eat it later. No big deal. And they were like, oh, sorry, our delivery hours for lunch are done. And I was like, okay. I was like, again, no big deal. I'll get my car. I'll go pick it up myself. The restaurant's about a mile away. And I start walking away. And then a guy on set was like, where do you think you're going? Like, we're about to do this take. You can't leave right now. And I was like, all right. Again, like I'm still keeping my cool. I was like, all right.
Keep it together.
I didn't pay for the sandwich. I'm not losing money. Like I am grateful for work. It's hard to find work in LA when you're first moving out here. Like it's not a big deal. So then I just they had a bunch of Luna bars. I just gorged myself on Luna bars. And I'm like, no big deal. Camera operator walks over and he's like, okay, who the fuck ate all the Luna bars? And I lost it. I was like, I can't. It's me. I was like, it's me. And then my girlfriend picked me up
later. And I'm gay.
Yeah, and I'm gay. And my girlfriend picked me up later that day, and she was telling me about like how awesome she'd spent the day at the beach. It was summer vacation. And she just like looks over at me, and I'm just like streaming tears. And I was like, I'd ordered an olive tapenade sandwich. I had a full-on mental break, and it was like 90-something degrees. It was really hot. And then I ended up leaving Pie Town, and I was Luc Besson's assistant for a year. And then after that, I quit and did TYT and all that stuff.
Wow, that's very, very cool. What a cool journey. By the way, what does your girlfriend do?
She is a lawyer. She works for, I don't know if I should say where she works.
You don't have to say what. Just what kind
She's
of
a lawyer.
law.
She works in litigation.
For boo and boop and boo.
She works, she is a lawyer. She works in litigation for a corporate firm.
Okay, that's cool.
Serious law stuff. Very serious job.
So you and your girlfriend, and she was still only your girlfriend as the trip began, you began this Alaska adventure. Now, you'd mentioned to me before we went on the air that you guys like these drives. You know, you like to drive. And so this wasn't like your first long drive.
No, not at all. This was I think it was like our second major long drive, because we'd done the California coast before. We started in, I think it was Sonoma, and we drove down to San Diego, which actually is not really that northern California as you can get, but she lived in Berkeley at the time, and it was after I just quit my job at Europa Corp, and I needed the break of, I was an assistant, and like we just talked about, assistant life is just really crazy, and I needed to just turn off my phone and go on a trip. So she and I and our dog at the time, we just piled in the car and we went from Sonoma down to San Diego and then back up to LA, and I think it took about a week, and we camped along the way. We love camping, again, very on brand for lesbians. And so we did that, and we just enjoyed it so much that we've always loved taking little trips. We went to Corsgold for, I think it was Labor Day or some long weekend a while back, and that was really cool. And then we knew that we wanted to, she was ending her job. She was a clerk for a federal judge, and she was able to name her start date with the law firm, so she had a month off.
Oh, nice.
And I fortunately have a little bit of job flexibility where, because I'm like a contract employee for TYT, I can just say, like, don't book me for this month. I'm doing something important. And that thing was driving to Alaska. We decided that if you can drive there, we should go there. And
via the Alaskan Highway?
We did. Yeah, we did the Alaskan Highway, and it was so cool.
Okay, well, wait. So we're not
getting ahead of ourselves.
I'm not at the Alaskan Highway yet.
Sorry, we haven't left California.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We're still in LA. So you sit down, and you have a dog, right?
Yes, we have a dog. His name is Willie Nelson.
You were going to take Willie Nelson with you, or what was the plan?
Yes, we knew, because that's a big thing for us, is that we love our animals so much that we we feel bad leaving without them. It's really hard. I stayed in town for Thanksgiving this year. You don't want to leave them. And so we knew if we were going to take a trip, we just would feel better. There's no way we could leave him for a month. So we figured out a way that we could take him with us and also have a bit of an adventure too.
And what kind of car were you in? And so where was Willie Nelson the whole time? And how did that all work?
You ready for this? It's very on brand. I drive a Subaru. Yeah.
I wouldn't have guessed that just because it would have been too hack.
So did you feel the draw to a Subaru the way you felt the draw to come out, or did you get a Subaru when you came out?
Oh,
I thought you got a Subaru when you came out.
When you come out, they just hand you the keys. Congratulations, and here's a Katie Lang album.
It's about
Yeah, no, I actually did. I did my research, and for what we do, which is a lot of road trips, a Subaru was really the best car. I have a Subaru Crosstrek, a 2016 Subaru Crosstrek. I really love it. And I just got it checked out by the helpful Subaru Santa Monica dealership before we left. I told them the trip that I was going on. I was in contact with them months prior, just making sure that I, dotted my I's, crossed my T's.
And it was ladies' night at the Subaru dealership.
And it was, how they do. Wow, actually, that is not. If Subaru is not doing that, like lesbian meetups, like get on that.
Test drive?
Yeah, test drive
a new friend.
Yeah, test drive a new friend.
They say if you were to drive from L.A. to Alaska continuously, it would be 60 hours up the I-5. But you, of course, are planning a trip that is going to involve, as you say, camping out and taking routes that I would imagine are sort of interesting and where there's stops that you want to. So if you've researched the Subaru part of it, I'm sure you've researched the Alaska travel part of it. You've decided. So you guys sit down with, in a situation room and
We went to Republic of Pie in North Hollywood, and we just decided we were going to eat pie all day and plan out our trip. And we did that. We just sort of sat in front of Google Maps and we figured out about how much we would want to drive per day. And if there are certain areas that there's not much to see, so you just want to, plow through them. But some days we would drive 4 hours. One day we drove 8 hours. So it would, sort of vary. What
was the 8-hour part? Do you remember what part of the world that was? What part of was it California, Oregon? What was it?
No, it was in between Vancouver and wherever, somewhere in British Columbia.
I see. Okay.
So there's some place where there's civilization.
Yeah, there's a lot of just vast areas of land where there is not much, and it is breathtaking because there is that weird expression that's kind of comforting for you, no one can hear you scream. That's scary for some people, but for me, I just crave that sort of quiet, contemplative time where you feel like you are truly just alone with the people that you care about the most. It was very profound. And just aside from the road that you can just see straight and behind you, there's nothing. Right. And we saw 5 bears in one day.
That's cool.
They're black bears, and one of them was a cub, so we weren't afraid. But
and you were in a car.
Yeah, we were in a car.
Areas that you say where you look ahead and there's nothing, and you look behind and there's nothing, and you look around and there's nothing. Those are wooded areas. Those are what is the landscape as you go north? Is it trees and stuff?
It's trees. It's mountains. There'd be a lot of bodies of water that we would look up this must surely be a historical lake. Nope. And it's not.
It's just another thing a glacier
it's just
caused.
It's just a thing. That was, I think, the craziest thing, especially when we were driving out of Anchorage on our way back, knowing that the trip was coming to a close, we would just sometimes pull over on the side of the highway and remind ourselves that this was not a national park. This was just Alaska. This was just what it looks like. And we went during September, so I know that is, I would highly recommend if someone wants to do the trip to go in around August, September. We were already seeing signs for having to get chains on your tires by a certain date in October because it was getting really chilly. So I know that we didn't see any of the snowfall or anything like that, but we saw the leaves changing, and that was just crazy.
Yeah, and just to, again, geography, especially given our lives, you can kind of lose track of the geography, but you have to drive up California, you're going from L.A. through California, as you say. You think of San Francisco or Sonoma as Northern California. It's not really.
Halfway.
It's Central California, exactly. Northern California, it does get really wooded up, I want to say Crescent City or someplace like that is up way north. And then you get into Oregon, Washington, and then you think, then you're close to Alaska. Not really. You have to then go into Canada. You're driving a bunch of Canada, right?
Yeah, we drove through British Columbia and the Yukon, And
that's like a bulk of the trip.
It's a huge part of the
That's
trip.
about
Right.
1,000 miles
Right.
between the Canadian border and Alaska, isn't there?
Right.
Yeah. There is a lot of space, but we actually had 2 different routes. So on the way up, we went through Nevada, and I think we crossed Montana. I'm gonna be missing Idaho. I know we drove, so we went like a roundabout way.
Oh, that's a cool way to go.
Montana's
though.
good because there's no daytime speed limit. Too.
Oh yeah, Montana was. We went to this amazing donut shop. What's great about the trip is that you find these places randomly that people will just recommend. Like if you're stopping in Helena, you got to go to this donut shop.
Right.
And we went there that morning, and it was just a great donuts. And I'm blanking on the name of it right now. I wish I could plug them, but if you look up Amazing Donuts in Helena, Montana, I feel confident they will come up.
Okay.
Helena Yelp, people.
Yeah.
What a cool way to go, though. So you're getting all these mountains. And,
Yeah.
So you crossed back across the Canadian Rockies then?
Yes.
Sort of? Okay.
Yeah.
Wow, really cool.
Yeah, that was the day that we crossed the border, I think twice or something during the day. I know my girlfriend is also a travel blogger. She has a blog of our travels called Have Dog Will Drive.
Oh, that's cool.
And she kept a detailed log of our trip and where we were going. And I know that she reminded me that there was something cool that was happening on that day where we would actually be crossing a border twice, even though it didn't really feel like it.
Was there any issues bringing your dogs across the border?
We heavily prepared for that, especially since he is a pit bull, and there are a lot of breed restrictions when it comes to bully breeds. And honestly, what they would ask when we got to the border, and I'm not saying that this is like universal, everyone be really cautious, go to get everything you need from your vets and whatever, but they would ask, do we have his paperwork? And we would say yes, and they never really asked us to produce it. I think they just want to know that his shots are up to date, and you have to have a certificate of good health from your vet. But they didn't check it. I think that they just, if you can respond yes to that question, then...
I used to be a road comic when I was a kid, and I would just, no matter what, when I crossed the Canadian border, they would put me in a room and search my car when I said I was a comedian.
Oh, yeah, well, comedian is not going to...
yeah, that's not...
Yeah. Make this funny, asshole. Wait right there. Yeah. When you were coming back into this country, were they tougher, or was it also kind of a pretty mellow?
I mean, I wouldn't say that they were mellow, but because they were intimidating, but they weren't rude or snippy, or they definitely didn't give us a hard time about the dog. They were just very direct in their questioning, and also, I mean, the thing is that if you see Lizzy, she's the most buttoned up type A together person. She had a whole binder of papers. So I think that they could see when they looked in, and she was like preparing the papers. They were like, "We got it, lady. You have the paperwork." Like, I think if it had been probably me in my natural state, which is just a mess, they might have been like,
softball tournament.
Yeah. It would have been like, "Where's the rest of your team?" They would have been like, "We're gonna really need to see this paperwork." But I think that Lizzy's confidence and her preparation and anticipation of these questions gave them the ease that let us sort of
litigator
go through.
approach to
Yeah.
Yeah. Before you cross the Canadian border, when you're going up through Nevada and Idaho, Montana, what was surprising about that? Had you been to those places before? Or?
I hadn't been to those places before.
Or what was striking about it? Maybe it wasn't surprising, but what were the standouts? Because I've never, it seems like that would just be the greatest. That's where I want to go, all these places in the West that I think are just so dramatic and spectacular.
I think what really made an impact on me was the space. That there's space to breathe and to live, and how that affects people's pace of life. The biggest takeaway that I had from the trip is that as you get into these more into places that are not Los Angeles, you break out of your bubble. I live in West Hollywood. I live in a gay ass bubble, and I am privileged in that for sure. But where I was sort of expecting to feel other, in maybe parts of the country where they don't have like dykey bitches like myself showing up a lot, I actually felt very embraced, I would say. Like there was one interaction that really stood out to me that was somewhere in Alaska. Somewhere in the middle of nowhere, Alaska. And we were in a parking lot, and Lizzy was going to go in, grab us like some food. And I was waiting in the parking lot, and right next to Willie and I, there was a truck. And in the bed of this truck, there were a bunch of pieces of moose that had been cut up. and just in the truck, and they'd been tied down. And there was this guy that walks out of the restaurant, decked out in all camo, and the truck had a bunch of Trump stickers on it and Trump Pence. And Pence for me is like, ooh, like the worst. And this guy comes out,
right?
This guy comes out in all camo, and he is like, hey, like, and I'm like, oh God, please don't be talking to me. And he's like, is that your dog? And I realized that this is the owner of the truck, and I was just like, I was like, yes, this is my dog. And he's like, I love pit bulls. Can I come say hi? And I was like, yes.
He even did it right.
And I was
asked.
like, can I come say hi? And I was like, absolutely. And so he comes over, and we were just visiting. He was visiting with the dog, and then Lizzy comes out and sees me interacting with this guy. And like you would look at the between the two of us and be like, these people have nothing in common. And our politicians these days serve to divide us, to tell us that we have nothing in common. You know, even myself, I'm making this judgment on like, oh, he has a moose in the back of his truck. Like, oh, he's this violent person. You know, I mean, I don't know what I was thinking, but the barriers are broken down because I believe that at the core of us, we are all kind and we just want to understand each other. And Lizzy, at that time, I think we were engaged when this happened. So she has a ring on her finger, and you know, I feel like we look very gay together. We really don't get very often that like, are you guys sisters? Like that doesn't really happen. Right. And so it was a very encouraging interaction that like nothing of substance came of it. We didn't talk about anything, but it was sort of this moment where he was like, oh, you guys from California? He's like, yeah, we live in Los Angeles. He's like, oh, like, and just like having this moment of like, we're not as different as sometimes we think we are.
Sure, if you sat down with that guy, he probably doesn't give a shit that you're gay.
Doesn't care.
He, I'm sure, would give a shit about certain things on policy that he could get into a thing with you about. I mean, and maybe not even a too divisive, maybe just a real conversation about, maybe a substantive conversation. But your lifestyle, I'm sure it's like, we don't
Alaska
care.
Strikes me, but from all accounts I've heard, is a pretty live and let live place. It's pretty libertarian in its disposition, it seems like there.
Yeah. Like there was one encounter too where we were getting a hotel room because it started hailing. It was like hailing really badly, and we had to get a hotel room. And the woman at the front desk, and this is actually very common, where we'll be like, oh, we need to get a hotel room, and she's like, oh, I'm so sorry, the only beds we have are we only have one queen bed. We don't have any doubles. You guys are gonna have to share. And so we're like, that's fine. Like that's fine. And she was like, oh, like. She was like, oh, that's fun. And I was like, slumber party every night, like where you can sort of laugh about it. So
it was a good I got a good lesson because I like I said, I was the teenage road comic, and so I've performed in like 46 states now, various things, and it's just, the thing you were talking about people basically being the same is absolutely the case. I mean, there are places where people are more polite, and there's places where people are just more friendly. But I think in general, no one is walking around like everyone else is the enemy, and other than online.
When we stay in our bubbles, it's just so easy to other people that are not in our immediate circle, and I don't think that that's right. I really enjoy disagreeing with someone and then being like, oh, well, we disagree on this and we are still cool and we still want the basic things in life. We still, want to pursue happiness and love who we want to love, and just like, it's kind of like how you view your neighbors. Like, just, I'll say hello to you, but I don't really want too much to, if we disagree on certain things about how the neighborhood should be run, then like, cool, and we can take that to our local councilman. But like, I don't wish ill on you. I don't.
Right. I want everything to go well over there, and I want everything to go well over here, and I want us just to kind of stay in our respective places. Yeah. But if we need to interact, it's fine. But yeah, we're not. Yeah.
By the same token, I've never been more glad to be living in California than during the Trump era. This was the first time I truly felt like I am a proud Californian, Until then I was a Minnesota guy who moved here a quarter century ago, but since the Trump administration, I was like, this is the place to be during this period.
When you drove up to Alaska, you can drive down, like there's a lot of coastline of Alaska, of course.
Yeah.
And then there's this huge chunk of Alaska that is not covered by water. And so how do you decide what part of Alaska you wanted to see? How long a trip was it?
It was 3 weeks, maybe just over 3 weeks.
Yeah, so that you really have to kind of be efficient about your decisions.
Yeah, we really did. So we got to Anchorage, and we stayed in Anchorage. I think
so Anchorage
just for the restaurants.
Yeah.
Anchorage is down at the water.
Yeah, Anchorage is right on the water. You can walk to, I will say, a beach. Coast is probably a better word. Yeah. That's what we kind of stayed in Anchorage. We explored the restaurants. We did actually explore the restaurants. I already had the best oysters of my life in
oysters. I would love to eat.
Yeah, oysters in Anchorage were out of this world. There's this bar, I think it's called the Bubbly Mermaid. It's like an oyster bar, oysters and champagne. That is all they serve.
Oh, nice.
So good, and it can only seat about 8 people.
Yeah.
And if this place was in New York, there'd be a line around the corner because it's so exclusive. But it just exists on a street in Anchorage, and it was so great. And we stayed in Anchorage. We went to Beluga Point. We went to just areas around Anchorage. But I, proposed to Lizzy in Kincaid Park on the 14th of September. And once that happened, it just sort of, the rest of our time in Anchorage, we were calling family members, and we just wanted to stew and enjoy our time. And,
sure. You wanted to luxuriate in that romance.
Before we began the long journey home.
Did she know that you were going to propose? Probably.
I think she knew that it was on the horizon, that it was something we hadn't really talked about it directly, but we'd said enough to know that we both wanted that.
And you both had been seeing each other for how long, did you say?
4 years.
4 years, and then you were living together for how long?
We just moved in together.
Oh, okay,
so
that's cool.
We're like oddly old school traditional, where we didn't want to live together before we got engaged, so we just moved in last month.
Now, how's that going, by the way?
It's really nice.
Is it?
It's really nice. I feel like we kind of earned it in a sense because, your date, first of all, she was in Berkeley at law school for a number of years when we were dating. And then she lived in LA for a year, and she lived like less than half a mile from me. But it still is different when you have stuff at one person's place and then another person's place.
Right.
And we shared a dog still. So like that was a whole thing.
That's a thing.
So now living together and just knowing that when you come home at the end of the day, that she's going to be there and you can just catch up and share your meals. And because we didn't hang out every single day when we were living in the same city. I'd probably see her like 4 times a week, something like that.
When you're on a long trip like that and you're with somebody, even though you planned this to pop the question, were there ever like moments you go, you know what, I don't think I'm going to marry this bitch. She is really on my fucking shit.
You know what's crazy is that it's so corny, but we just got along so well on the trip. I know it's cheap. I wish I had.
No, it's great.
That's why you propose to people.
But no, we had so much fun. We were listening to podcasts. We made so many stupid inside jokes you couldn't even tell other people because they wouldn't understand it. I just feel like we got closer than ever on the trip because there's no one else that like there's no one else there. You don't really have cell phone service. So it really bonded us. So when I did propose, I felt, terrified, but at the same time, just so confident that this was the right thing that I wanted to do. And I'd had the ring, it's a family ring, and I'd had it in my wallet for the whole drive, it was hard because I knew that I wanted to keep it on me, but I didn't want to like put it in my shoe or something. I don't know. Right. And so I decided to keep it in my wallet, but then anytime Lizzy would be like, oh, I'll just go into the gas station, grab us a coffee. Can I, I'll have your wallet or something like that. I'd be like, just really be careful with it, and she said upon, once it had happened, she's like, now that I think about it, you were very like oddly protective of your wallet.
I almost broke up with you because of the wallet thing.
It'd be things like, she's like, oh, like I was like, did I leave my wallet in the car? And she'd be like, yeah. And I'd like get out of the tent and just lock the car. I'd like beep it again while we were at the campsite just to make sure that my car was locked.
Yeah, in the movie they break up over some wallet argument, right? And then it's, I was just trying to keep you from knowing. It's very cool. Your parents. You come from a conservative, I think is the way you put it, Catholic upbringing, do you not?
Episcopal. My dad is an Episcopal priest.
I thought you told me on the set one day that you're Catholic. Or maybe it's Episcopal. No,
yeah,
I'm sorry.
Which is basically diet Catholic.
I don't really listen to what other people say.
Episcopal is just like light Catholicism.
Oh, it is?
Yeah. That's the difference.
It's the British kind, right?
Yeah, it's Anglican. So I was
So what is the difference? I'm sorry. What does that mean?
Church of England split off from the Catholic Church at Henry VIII. And
he wanted to get divorced.
I see.
Yeah. When Henry VIII became that guy, he decided he had to form a whole other denomination, and that's the Anglican Church. And historically, it has been very progressive. They have female priests. Priests can marry, gay marriage, A-OK. I mean, there is definitely some discord within the church on that, but for the most part, for example, we go to church at St. Aidan's in Malibu, and we've never felt different, or it hasn't been like a cause for conversation among the congregation. Like, should we allow this gay couple into our church? So the Episcopal Church has been super awesome. I definitely would consider myself to be a person of faith. Like, it's very important to me, and I was raised in it. But my parents were very cool in the sense where it wasn't really impressed upon me. It was more like, this is what we do on Sundays, and like, this is what it's about, but you can make your own decisions. We've raised you well. figure it out on your own. And I ended up just sort of coming back around to finding great comfort and understanding in my Christian faith. So yeah,
that's really it's interesting that I do think it sort of becomes a touchstone for comfort, for tradition, for family, for
compassion. I think,
and then ultimately, and maybe first, some spiritual connect. But I'm thinking, even if you don't get the spiritual connect, there's all the other stuff. It's growing up every Sunday we went. There's something comforting to me about going.
There's a tradition about it for sure. Yeah. Like right now, what Lizzy and I do on Sundays is every Sunday morning we go to Cantor's. You guys know Cantor's. Go to Cantor's for breakfast. It's the best. And then we, make our way over to Malibu. And for me, it's just helps me understand the world and to treat people with compassion and empathy whenever I can. I have "Lean Not on Your Own Understanding" tattooed on my arm because as crazy as things are, it's so helpful for me to remember that it's not about me and my problems, and there is a greater power that we are compelled to serve other people and those less fortunate than us. And just to remind myself that there are going to be things I don't understand that don't make sense, and not to hold that inside because that will just make you crazy.
Right. Like an actual reminder of what faith is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shut the fuck up and have faith.
Right.
Well, it's
is my next tattoo. Shut the fuck up and have faith.
It's a gift if you can, I think.
Yeah, exactly. It's a gift if you can. Right. Well, we're out of time, but you did make it back from Alaska in one piece, and you guys survived.
Also, just really quick, if your listeners want to watch our journey, there's a music video of the whole journey that I made called for my musical project. So it's Semler, Don't Grow Up Too Fast. And I just filmed the whole journey. I had little signs along the way where they can document our journey on our way to Alaska.
Will you send me that link?
Absolutely.
And then we'll put it on our website.
Yeah.
So if you want that link, rather than trying to jot it down right now, it's on our website, edge-show.com. So if you're listening on iTunes or iHeartRadio, just go to edge-show.com. Our parent website will have a hot link right to Grace's stuff. And for that matter, we'll put a link up to, I wonder if I can put up Murder with Friends. Can I put up a link? Sure, I can put up a link to that.
Sure.
Yeah, okay.
Do whatever makes you feel happy, Mark.
I'm going to do it. I'll make certain that happens. Do we leave anything out? We left a bunch of stuff out, but this has been really interesting.
I had a good time.
Yeah, it was really good.
I had a blast.
I don't feel incomplete, really.
Well, you
Thanks
have to.
for
I'm sure you
having
have
me, guys.
more good stories.
You'll have to come back. J.Elvis, congratulations on the release of your film, which is coming up.
Thank you very much. On iTunes, Google, Amazon, Microsoft, and a bunch of pay-per-view cable.
And it's called I Need You to Kill. It's about comedy in Asia and the road trip that a handful of comics take to Asia to do comedy. Pretty cool. Grace Baldridge, thanks. Just think you're terrific. So this is
Thanks
cool
for
that you
having
came
me.
and
This is
hung
great.
Hung out with us a little bit. Grace Baldridge, thanks.
Get more of The Edge on Stitcher and iTunes, or go to our website, edge-show.com.
Hey, everybody, why don't you do me a favor and like The Edge with Mark Thompson on Facebook? Yeah, that's going to bring in the kids.
Subscribe to The Edge with Mark Thompson on iTunes or on Stitcher.
edge-show.com.
edge-show.com.